The woman in seat 13F had been dead for 2 years. At least, that's what her tombstone said. But when Flight 920 started falling from the sky at 41,000 feet, the dead pilot opened her eyes. And 342 passengers had no idea their only chance at survival was sitting among them. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching, also like and subscribe for more stories. Sarah Martinez pressed her face against the cold airplane window, watching clouds drift past at 41,000 feet. She was 17, flying alone for the first time, heading to study abroad in Germany. Her stomach churned with nervous excitement. Beside her in seat 13E, a businessman typed furiously on his laptop. He hadn't looked up once since takeoff. In seat 13F, the middle seat, sat a woman Sarah barely noticed. Average height, dark hair in a ponytail, wearing jeans and a gray sweater. She read a paperback book, sipping coffee occasionally. Just another passenger. United Flight 920 had been in the air for 4 hours. Everything felt routine. Boring, even. The hum of engines, the occasional turbulence, the flight attendants pushing their carts down the aisle. Then Sarah heard it. A sound like a distant explosion. The woman in 13F dropped her book. Her hands gripped the armrests, knuckles white. The businessman looked up, confused. "Did you hear?" The plane shuddered. Hard. Overhead panels popped open. Yellow oxygen masks dropped, dangling in front of shocked passengers. The recorded message played, "Oxygen masks have been deployed. Place the mask over your nose and mouth." Sarah's heart hammered. What's happening? All around them, people started screaming. A baby cried. Someone shouted, "We're going to crash." The captain's voice came through speakers, trying to sound calm but failing. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have experienced a collision with an object. We have significant damage. Please remain calm." Sarah looked out the window. What she saw made her blood freeze. Part of the wing was gone. Just, gone. A huge section missing. And fuel was streaming out, a long trail disappearing into the sky behind them. "Oh God," she whispered. "We're going to die." The plane tilted. They were descending. Not fast, but steady. Inevitable. Sarah pulled out her phone with shaking hands. She needed to call her mom. To say goodbye. Tears streamed down her face. "I don't want to die. I haven't even gone to college yet." The businessman beside her tried calling his wife. "Lisa. Lisa, I need to tell you," his voice broke. Throughout the cabin, 342 people prepared to die. Mothers held children. Strangers held hands. People prayed in different languages. The woman in 13F sat perfectly still, eyes closed. But Sarah noticed something strange. The woman wasn't panicking. She wasn't crying. She looked focused. Like she was thinking. 800 miles away, in Iceland, 2 fighter pilots ran toward their jets. Captain Marcus Blade Hendricks and Lieutenant Sarah Reaper Chen had been playing cards when the alarm went off. Now they were sprinting across the tarmac, pulling on helmets, their F-22 Raptors already being prepped. "Civilian aircraft in distress," their commander shouted. Boeing 787, catastrophic damage, descending over the North Atlantic. "Get there. Now." For minutes later, they were airborne, going supersonic. Blade's radio crackled. "Flight 920 is at 38,000 feet. Descending fast. Last position," the controller gave coordinates. Blade transmitted, "Flight 920, this is NATO Fighter Patrol, call signs Blade and Reaper. We're coming to you. What's your situation?" The captain's voice came back, strained and desperate. "We have catastrophic left-wing damage. Lost structural integrity. Losing fuel. Controls are compromised. Descending through 36,000 feet. I don't know how to stop it. Translation, we're going to crash, and there's nothing we can do. Hang in there, 920. We'll be there in 3 minutes. At NATO operations in Brussels, controllers stared at screens showing Flight 920's telemetry. A senior controller, Commander Roberts, watched the numbers with growing horror. My God, he muttered. This is a Volov scenario. A younger officer looked up. A what? Captain Elena Volov. Call sign Valkyrie. Air Force test pilot, specialized in high-altitude emergency recovery. She developed techniques for exactly this kind of situation. Asymmetric damage, control failures at altitude. Can we get her on the line? Roberts shook his head sadly. She's dead. Went down over the Arctic 2 years ago. The techniques are still taught, but without someone who truly understands them. He trailed off. Over the emergency frequency, NATO transmitted, Flight 920, do you have any military pilots aboard with high-altitude emergency experience? Long pause. Then the captain's bitter laugh. We need Elena Volov. But she's been dead for 2 years. Back on Flight 920, the woman in 13F opened her eyes. Her name was Elena Volov. And she was very much alive. 2 years ago, she had been declared killed in action during a classified mission over the Arctic. Her experimental aircraft had crashed into the freezing ocean. The Air Force held a memorial service. Her name was added to a wall honoring fallen pilots. But a Norwegian fishing boat had pulled her from the water. By the time communication was sorted out, she'd already been declared dead. And Elena, suffering from severe PTSD, had chosen not to correct the mistake. For 2 years, she'd lived quietly in Oslo. Working as a technical writer. Drinking coffee at the same cafe each morning. Building a peaceful life far from the constant edge of death that military flying required. She'd thought she was done. Thought she'd earned her peace. But now, listening to the panic around her, feeling the plane descend, she knew the truth. 342 people were going to die in about 7 minutes. Unless someone who understood the physics, who knew the techniques, who had trained for the impossible. Elena closed her book. Her hands had stopped shaking. Her mind was clear now, running calculations, analyzing the problem. This was a Volov scenario. She'd developed techniques for exactly this emergency. She'd saved 3 pilots from similar situations. She could save this plane. But that was Valkyrie. That was someone who died in the Arctic. Sarah's voice broke through her thoughts. I don't want to die. Please, someone help us. Elena looked at the teenage girl. 17 years old. Whole life ahead of her. She looked around the cabin. A mother holding twin toddlers. An elderly couple gripping each other's hands. The businessman frantically trying to reach his wife. 342 lives. Damn it, Elena whispered. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. A young flight attendant blocked her path. Ma'am, return to your seat immediately. Elena's voice changed. Suddenly it carried command, authority, steel. Listen carefully. My name is Captain Elena Volov, call sign Valkyrie, former Air Force pilot specializing in high-altitude emergency recovery. This aircraft is in what's called a Volov scenario. You have about 6 minutes before this becomes unrecoverable. I can save this aircraft, but I need access to that cockpit right now. The attendant stared, mouth open. Tell the captain that Valkyrie is aboard, Elena said firmly. He'll understand. The attendant ran toward the cockpit. 30 seconds later, she returned, pale. The captain says that's impossible. Valkyrie died 2 years ago. Elena's jaw tightened. Tell him I got better. And tell him we're wasting time people don't have. Sarah had followed Elena. Are you really going to save us? Elena looked at her. Young. Scared. Alive. Yes. Go back to your seat and hold on tight. It's going to get rough, but we're all going home today. The cockpit door opened. Captain Robert Hayes turned. He saw an ordinary woman in jeans and a sweater. Who are you? Captain Elena Volov, call sign Valkyrie. Serial number 3345789. Declared killed in action 2 years ago in the Arctic. I survived. I've been living in Oslo. She paused. Today I'm supposed to be flying to a boring meeting. Instead, I'm going to save your aircraft. First Officer Maria Chen shook her head. This is insane. Captain, Elena interrupted, eyes on instruments. You're descending through 32,000 feet at 1,200 feet per minute. Your left wing has lost 15% structural integrity. You're leaking fuel at 200 gallons per minute. In 5 minutes, you'll reach the point of no return. At that point, this becomes unrecoverable. She turned to face Hayes directly. So we can waste time debating, or we do this my way. I've recovered 3 aircraft from situations almost identical to this. I literally wrote the manual on high-altitude emergency recovery. But I need your complete trust, and I need it right now. Hayes stared at her. At his instruments. At his terrified co-pilot. Over the radio, Flight 920, this is Blade. Please confirm, did someone just say Valkyrie? Elena took the co-pilot's headset. Blade, this is Valkyrie. Authentication code Victor Kilo 77 Romeo. Confirm my identity with command. But while you're doing that, I need visual confirmation on wing damage. Where exactly is the structural compromise? Stunned silence. Then, Valkyrie. Ma'am, we studied your techniques at Nellis. We thought you were dead. I was. It didn't take. Now tell me about that wing. Rapid conversation in the background at NATO operations. Someone pulling her file, checking voice signatures, comparing audio. Blade came back, voice awed. Valkyrie, you have 6 feet of leading-edge structure missing, mid-span left wing. Fuel streaming from 2 breach points. Control surfaces showing flutter. Copy, Blade. Stand by. Elena turned to Captain Hayes. Well? He stared one more second, then unbuckled. The observer seat is yours. Tell me what to do. Elena slid into the seat between the 2 pilots, eyes scanning instruments, mind working through solutions at lightning speed. First, she said calmly, stop fighting the aircraft. You're trying to keep wings level, which bleeds energy and increases stress on the damaged structure. But if we don't, Hayes started. If you keep fighting, you'll tear the wing off completely. We're going to use the asymmetry instead of fighting it. Controlled bank into the good wing, using it as the primary lift surface. This reduces stress on the damaged side while maintaining sufficient airspeed. Chen's voice rose. That's insane. Banking into a descent makes us fall faster. No. Banking while maintaining specific power settings and pitch angle converts descent rate into a controllable spiral. It's energy management. Physics. Elena's voice was absolutely calm. Trust the math. I've done this before. She began guiding them, step by step. Captain, gentle roll to the right. 5 degrees. Slow and steady. Rolling right, Hayes said, voice tight with fear. The aircraft tilted. Passengers screamed. Sarah gripped her armrests, terrified. But Elena watched instruments with satisfaction. Good. Now reduce power on the right engine by 5%. Increase left to 88%. That increases the asymmetry. Chen protested. Yes. Intentional asymmetry to counter unintentional asymmetry. The math works. Trust me. Hayes made the adjustments. The aircraft shuddered. Then something changed. We went from 1,200 to 1,000 feet per minute, Chen said, disbelieving. It's working. Now adjust trim, Elena continued. Small rudder inputs. Let the aircraft find its balance point. Over the radio, Reaper's voice, Blade, are you seeing this? The 787 just changed its descent profile. Like someone who knows what they're doing is flying it, Blade finished. Valkyrie, what's your plan? Controlled asymmetric descent to 12,000 feet, then emergency approach to Shannon. For the next 12 minutes, Elena guided them through flying that defied every commercial aviation principle but followed pure physics. Maintain 15 degrees bank to the right, she instructed. Don't fight it. Let the good wing do the work. Hayes's hands cramped on the controls, but he followed her instructions exactly. The aircraft felt wrong, constantly tilted, engines at asymmetric thrust, controls responding sluggishly. But the numbers didn't lie. They were descending slower. More controlled. Blade, I need you to fly formation on our damaged side, Elena transmitted. Call out any changes you see in the wing structure. If that damage starts to spread, I need to know immediately. Copy, Valkyrie. Moving into position. The F-22 slid closer, Blade's trained eyes scanning the damaged wing. Valkyrie, I'm seeing increased flutter on your outboard aileron. And the fuel leak is getting worse. Expected. Lower altitude means denser air, more stress. But we're managing it. Elena turned to Chen. I need you to shut down left engine fuel supply from the damaged wing tanks. Switch to center tank only. We need to stop that leak. Chen's fingers flew across controls. Fuel transfer in progress. Left wing tanks isolating, now. The fuel stream from the damaged wing slowed, then stopped. Good work, Elena said. Captain, begin reducing descent rate. Very gently. We're going to level off at 12,000 feet. It took 8 more agonizing minutes, but they did it. The crippled 787 leveled off at 12,000 feet, holding altitude in a constant 15-degree bank, asymmetric thrust keeping them aloft in a way that violated every instinct but obeyed every law of physics. In the cabin, passengers had gone from screaming to stunned silence. The plane still felt wrong, tilted, vibrating oddly, but they'd stopped falling. Sarah wiped her tears. Are we going to be okay? The businessman stared at Elena's empty seat with new understanding. That woman, he whispered. She's flying the plane. She's actually saving us. Elena coordinated with air traffic control. Shannon approach, this is United 920. We're established at 12,000 feet with significant structural damage and asymmetric flight profile. We need priority landing, longest runway, full emergency response. United 920, Shannon approach. We copy. Runway 24, 10,495 feet. All emergency services standing by. You're cleared for immediate approach. Be advised, our approach will be non-standard. We'll be maintaining right bank throughout final approach. Landing will be hard. A pause. 920, we understand. The runway is yours. Elena turned to Hayes. Captain, here's how this is going to work. We can't straighten out without losing control. So we're going to land in a bank. That's impossible. No, it's improbable. Big difference. Elena's voice carried absolute certainty. We'll maintain 12 degrees bank through final. At 50 feet, I'll talk you through rapid bank reduction and flare. It'll be rough, but the gear will take it. This is a 787. It's built strong. Hayes swallowed hard. You've done this before. Twice. Both times in smaller aircraft, but the physics scales up. She paused. Do you trust me? He looked at her, this woman who'd appeared from nowhere, who'd been dead for 2 years, who'd somehow turned certain disaster into possible survival. Yeah, he said. I trust you. The approach to Shannon took 25 minutes. Every mile felt like an eternity. Elena called out constant adjustments. Add 2% power. Ease right rudder. There. Hold that attitude. The F-22s escorted them down, Blade and Reaper flanking the damaged airliner like protective angels. Looking good, Valkyrie, Blade transmitted. You're doing the impossible here. Not impossible, Elena replied calmly. Just very, very difficult. There's a difference. At 1,000 feet, Elena's voice became sharper, more focused. Gear down. The landing gear extended with a reassuring thump. 3 green lights. 500 feet. Maintain current profile. Don't change anything. The runway appeared ahead. Fire trucks and ambulances lined both sides, flashing lights creating a corridor of emergency vehicles. 200 feet. Looking good. Hold steady. Hayes's voice was tight. Landing in a bank feels wrong. Every instinct says to level out. Ignore your instincts. Trust the math. 100 feet. In the cabin, flight attendants shouted final instructions. Heads down. Stay down. Brace. 50 feet, Elena called. Now, Captain. Reduce bank angle. Gently. 5 degrees. 3 degrees. Level the wings. Hayes moved the controls with precision born from 3 decades of flying. The aircraft rolled level just as they reached the runway. Flare. Now. The 787 touched down hard. Very hard. The landing gear compressed fully, absorbing impact that made the entire aircraft shudder. They bounced once, a terrifying moment where everyone thought they'd lose it, then slammed back down. Hayes stood on the brakes. The aircraft slewed right, the damaged wing creating drag that tried to spin them, but Hayes compensated, fighting the controls with everything he had. They veered off the runway into grass, still traveling at 60 miles per hour. The nose gear collapsed. The aircraft pitched forward, sliding, metal screaming against earth. Then, finally, they stopped. Silence for 3 full seconds. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then the cabin erupted. Crying. Cheering. Prayers of thanksgiving in a dozen languages. Strangers hugging. Sarah sobbing with relief. The businessman laughing and crying at the same time. They were alive. All 342 of them. Emergency crews surrounded the aircraft within seconds. Escape slides deployed. Passengers evacuated in organized chaos, many looking back at the damaged plane in disbelief. Elena sat in the cockpit, hands finally shaking now that it was over. The adrenaline that had sustained her was draining away. Captain Hayes turned to her, eyes wet. You saved us. You saved everyone. We saved them, Elena corrected. You trusted me when every instinct said not to. That took courage. Hayes shook his head in wonder. Who are you really? How did you end up in seat 13F? Elena smiled tiredly. Long story. Maybe over coffee sometime. Within minutes, the story began spreading. Emergency responders who'd witnessed the impossible landing started talking. Air traffic controllers shared recordings. The F-22 pilots filed their reports. Dead pilot saves 342 lives, became the headline heard around the world. News helicopters circled Shannon Airport. Reporters mobbed the terminal. Social media exploded. Inside the airport, Elena sat in a quiet room with security, NATO officials, and increasingly nervous public relations people who had no idea how to handle this situation. A U.S. Air Force colonel arrived within 3 hours. Colonel Michael Torres had been Elena's commanding officer 6 years ago. He walked into the room, stopped, and stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. "Elena." His voice cracked. "My God. We buried you. I gave the eulogy at your memorial." "I'm sorry, sir. I survived the Arctic crash. Ended up in a Norwegian hospital. By the time I was coherent, you'd already declared me dead. And I chose not to correct it." Torres sat down heavily. "You just walked away. From everything. I was dying on the ground, even though I was alive in the air. The PTSD, the nightmares, I couldn't do it anymore. When fate gave me an out, I took it. I needed to stop being Valkyrie. And today?" Elena looked at him steadily. "Today, 342 people needed Valkyrie more than I needed peace. So I came back." Torres was quiet for a long moment. "The brass is going to want you back. Full reinstatement. Probably a promotion. Definitely medals." "No." Elena's voice was firm. "I'm not coming back to active duty. I can't. I won't survive it a second time." "Then what will you do?" Elena thought about Hayes and Chen, about how they trusted her completely despite every instinct. About the techniques she developed that had saved lives today. About all the pilots out there who might face similar situations. "I'll teach," she said slowly. "The Volov protocol shouldn't be some legend people half remember. It should be standard training. If I can teach others what I know, then when the impossible happens, more people will know how to handle it." Torres smiled. "That might be the best idea you've ever had." The press conference was scheduled for the next morning. Elena had barely slept, but she looked composed as she walked to the podium, wearing clothes borrowed from airport staff. Cameras flashed like lightning. Questions shouted from every direction. Elena waited for quiet, then began. "My name is Captain Elena Volov. 2 years ago, I was declared killed in action during a classified mission over the Arctic Ocean. The truth is, I survived, but chose not to correct the record. I was suffering from severe PTSD and needed to step away from military flying. I built a quiet life in Oslo, working as a technical writer." She paused, looking at the sea of faces. "Yesterday, I was just another passenger on Flight 920, flying to Frankfurt for a work meeting. When the aircraft was critically damaged, I had a choice. I could stay in my seat and let everyone die, or I could step forward and do what I trained my entire career to do. The choice was obvious." A reporter shouted, "Why fake your death?" "I didn't fake it. I survived something that killed me on paper, and I chose not to correct the mistake because I desperately needed to stop being Valkyrie. The constant edge of death flying was destroying me mentally. When I got a chance to walk away, I took it." "Will you return to active military service?" "No. I can't. My PTSD is real and ongoing. But I will train others. The techniques I used yesterday, the Volov protocol, should be taught widely. Commercial pilots, military pilots, anyone who might face extreme emergencies. The impossible is only impossible until someone teaches you how it's possible." "What would you say to critics who might call yesterday's landing luck?" Elena's expression hardened. "Luck is what happens when 6,000 hours of training meets desperate need. Those 342 people are alive because I spent years studying situations exactly like yesterday's disaster. I've saved 4 aircraft now using these techniques. 3 military, 1 commercial. That's not luck. That's preparation meeting purpose." 3 years later, the Valkyrie Institute opened near Oslo Airport. Elena had worked tirelessly to create it, funded by government grants, airline sponsorships, and donations from grateful passengers. The main training floor featured advanced simulators that could recreate any emergency scenario. The walls displayed photos from successful rescues, including dramatic images of Flight 920's damaged wing. On the central wall, in large letters, "The impossible is just the untrained. Master the edge cases, and you'll never face truly impossible odds." The first class included pilots from 15 countries. Commercial captains, military test pilots, flight instructors, all eager to learn from the legend herself. Captain Hayes had joined as an instructor. "She gave me back my crew, my passengers, my career," he told new students. "But more importantly, she taught me that the impossible is negotiable if you understand the physics." On graduation day, Elena stood before the first class of certified Volov protocol specialists. Among them was Sarah Chen, the teenage girl from Seat 13D. She'd decided to become a pilot because of what she'd witnessed. 3 years ago, Elena told them, "I sat in a quiet office in Oslo, thinking I'd never touch aircraft controls again. That Valkyrie was dead. Then 342 people needed the impossible. And I remembered something crucial: impossible is just a lack of imagination combined with insufficient training." She looked at each student. "You're leaving here today with knowledge most pilots will never have. You know how to handle situations others will call impossible. That's both a gift and a responsibility. Use it wisely. Use it to save lives." Later, Elena found herself in the simulator with a struggling student. "I can't do this," the young pilot said, frustrated. "It's impossible." Elena's voice was gentle but firm. "Not impossible. Not yet. Impossibility is temporary. Training is permanent. Reset and try again." The student nodded, took a deep breath, and reset the simulation. Elena watched with quiet satisfaction as she began again, this time with more confidence. Through the window, she could see aircraft landing at Oslo airport. Each one a small miracle of physics and human skill. Each one carrying people home to their families. She thought about her journey, from legendary pilot to presumed dead, to technical writer, to the woman who saved 342 lives, to teacher and mentor. It hadn't been a straight path. It had been messy and painful and full of hard choices. But standing here, watching new pilots learn to do the impossible, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real peace. Not the fragile peace of hiding, but the solid peace of purpose. Her phone buzzed. A message from Henrik, the teacher she'd been dating since saving Flight 920. "Dinner tonight? Want to hear about your day?" Elena smiled and typed back, "Yes. I have stories." She looked around the institute one more time. Students practicing in simulators. Instructors reviewing procedures. The next generation learning to turn impossible into possible. Valkyrie hadn't died in the Arctic. She just needed time to understand that legends don't get to retire, they get to evolve. Sometimes you have to disappear to discover who you're meant to become. And sometimes the world calls you back precisely when you've learned how to answer that call with wisdom instead of just courage. Elena Volov, Valkyrie, had finally found her place. Not in the cockpit where death waited around every corner, but here, where she could multiply herself through others. Where her knowledge could save thousands instead of just the few she could reach personally. The impossible was still out there. But now there were more people trained to face it. And that made all the difference.